this computer, Dora.
There we go. Recording.
We are recording. Oh, you see that? So I can't be all big brother on you.
I know.
All right, here we go. And 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Our purpose in life is to seek knowledge every single day, then turn around and pass the torch of knowledge on to someone else. If you want to leave a legacy, seek knowledge and pass the torch. Hey everybody, we are on another episode of Pass the Torch podcast, and we are joined today with a special guest, somebody I consider a family friend. He's got that uncle status, CJ Baumann. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome CJ Baumann to the show. Brother, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I've been trying to get you on the show for a while. Both schedules super busy.
Yeah.
That's what I would rather. Most of the guests are like that because I usually am talking to people who are out there getting after it. So
yeah,
the first question I usually ask, right, and it's always very varied and different for each person, but it's really your why for the business or the path that you're on. What is your why for that path? What keeps you getting up day after day?
Okay. So to give, I guess, the audience kind of some background, I active duty military, joined the Marine Corps, and that's the connection you and I have, obviously. But joined the Marine Corps back in 2009, and then did all my training and whatnot. Finally got my commission in 2012. Had some delay, and finally hit active service around 2013. So been in the Corps since then. And pretty early on, I found out about it's a small group, but it's called the Marine Corps Combat Art Program. And so the beauty, I kind of see my professional career having a paralleled approach with my art career, right? So I've always been an artist. It's been a skill that I've just out of pure joy, but also a self-feeding cycle of, as I've improved, it's fueled my passion for being an artist, and so I've just found that my pursuit of being a professional, my pursuit of desiring to lead others and just be an example in the community and within an organization, in this case the Marine Corps, a lot of the characteristics and the underpinning demands for excellence and pursuit of just a skill that needs to be refined and something that is to be mastered over a lifetime, that it is those exist in both categories. So the days that I'm full-time Marine, right, and I don't get a chance to do art, I'm thinking about art and I'm thinking about the parallels that exist between the two. And then when I'm in my studio and I'm being a full-time artist, I'm seeing the parallels between the struggles I'm having and the projects that I'm working on, the studio management that parallel to being a Marine. And so all that to say is I have found that those two paralleled together has just been a great experience. And I consider myself an amateur in the whole process because I've only been doing the art for the Marine Corps for about 5 years. And I'll dive into like the mentorship piece later on, but it's been great, man. And I think there's even like a spiritual component to it, and being a man who's grown up in a family of faith and practicing that now, there's a parallel between really all three of those, right? The professionalism of being a Marine Corps officer, my pursuit of managing and refining and becoming an expert in what I believe is a talent God has given me, and then just the parallels of employing my faith in those things, but also how it translates to being a family man and like having a wife and having kids. And so it's just really cool how this that triune component really is self-complementing, so that no matter which one you're doing, you're always thinking about the other. And so you never really get out of touch with the efforts of constant self-improvement that they all really demand, which is super cool. Yeah, that's kind of like the baseline up front, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard. So, and I see like both sides definitely feed into the other. And, I love the saying, war fighting is an art and science. And in
For
your
sure.
case, you're absolutely able to tap into both of those sides in a more particular way than most of us are able to. And I mean, right now you're at one of I think the epicenters of education for the Marine Corps. So that's probably had a special, giving you a different perspective than
Yeah.
people were able to actually have that experience. So
Absolutely, and you kind of a tangent, but on the same topic, Stephen Pressfield is most famous for his books, historical fictions, Gates of Fire,
yeah.
Virtues of War. The list goes on. He's got a ton of great books, but he also writes some nonfiction. And one of his books that I just am in love with is The War of Art. And it's play on words because not the art of war by Sun Tzu, but he does such a great job of just describing the struggle that exists for any creative person, whether you're a writer, whether you're a poet, whether you're a musician, whether you're a fine artist. And I'm sure that spectrum, is a little bit wider, even for creatives in the business world or whatever, that he just talks about that struggle and how to process and push through that for maximum output. And, Stephen Pressfield was a Marine once upon a time. And so he understands the battle space. He understands maneuver warfare. He understands MCDP1, if you will. I don't know if he's actually read it, but he takes, but a lot of his parallels inside his book parallel with what the Marine Corps teaches in regards to fighting. The enemy has a will, and just taking the nature of war and what we teach, at the institution here for second lieutenants is that the basis of how we fight and the basis of how we think is founded upon certain doctrines. And the principles inside that doctrine are vague enough that they can be applied to different spectrums, but specific enough that without a doubt when you read that book, you're talking about warfare. You're talking about going to a battle space, fighting an opponent, fighting some sort of opposing will, and seeking a way to neutralize and or destroy that and attain victory. A lot of those can be paralleled to just the struggles and achievements for over your goals that you have in your life, right? Whether it be professional or personal or whatever. And so it's interesting because, I think to a degree I share your passion with just leadership and mentorship and seeking those things out and seeing people grow and being a part of that process. I can definitely see that. Both in just the platoons that I've had the opportunity to manage, and just being able to be a direct influence in their lives, both in bearing the responsibility and knowing that you are going to influence the way they think and the way they act and the decisions they potentially make moving forward, but also just the opportunity to leave a mark on somebody months and years beyond the physical relationship that you have. And it's been, that's why I love the Marine Corps. And then I've seen similar aspects on the artist side where I've been mentored by some others and have been the recipient of that growth, have been the recipient of just that greater understanding and that refinement of my own skill. And it's a beautiful process. And then, even from a biblical perspective, mentorship, seeking others, making disciples, is a thing, and there's a plan for it. And I think God has designed us as people to be recipients of that, and for it to be a rewarding process as it unfolds.
Absolutely. No, I love that. That's a ton of value add. For context for everybody listening, CJ and I actually went to the basic school together, so it's full circle. We were in not only the same company, but the same platoon. And suffering together, figuring out what it is to be a provisional rifle platoon commander and then go on and do other things in the Marine Corps. And it's your primitive time. You're trying to figure things out, and you're doing it together with people that you're going to hopefully have contact with for the not only the rest of your career but the rest of your life. And so it's been amazing. This episode, I'm really able to see. I've been watching you, and not in a creepy, I kind of feel like somebody's watching me way, but admiring. I think that's more appropriate of not only your journey in the Marine Corps, but your journey with art, your journey as a father and husband, it's been pretty cool to watch as well. As much as, you know, I'm able to watch publicly, but like,
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
it's something that, you know, when we get to have a conversation on the podcast and I'm able to, again, like I can already hear just from how you're speaking, the growth that you've had over these last few years. So that's really amazing. I'm curious, what's your current project that you're working on, something that you're excited about at this current point in time?
Ooh, that's a tough question. So I've got a couple art projects that I'm working on, wrapping up some commissions. The gate is closed because, you know, we've got our third kid on the way, and just being about a little over a month out, that's coming quick. And so, you know, the art is gonna take a backseat, and that was planned, and so I think just, you know, we're coming up on the fork in the road where the Marine Corps is about to kind of about to go to school for a captain's level career course, and going to be kind of taking that on full time. So being a student again, which I love the practice of being a student, and it just helps when, you know, you're interested in the material. So kind of getting to plug that in, and then just looking forward to getting back to the fleet next summer as an active member, contributing member of the FMF. And so the biggest project right now, this may kind of sound cliche, but I think it's just like self-improvement is kind of where all my my time and focus has been lately. Just as we get ready to transition, self-improvement at home, and managing the two other kids that we have, and just learning to be a more graceful, forgiving, loving father while I've got the energy, because I know I'm about to lose a bunch of sleep, and I still want to, you know, and I want to be able to execute with those same factors of love and grace and just tenderness that a father should have, when I am tired, and when I can, you know, when my my irritation button is much more tempted to be pushed. And so and then just being, you know, so refining the family man component, and then just kind of prepping the battle space to be a good student when I go to school this fall, and then just maximizing my effort while I'm there, so I can walk away with that without any regrets, and just being a more competent professional. I mean, that sounds cliche, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who kind of desire to take the same mindset on, but I wish art could be more of a front, but it's realistically, it's probably third, maybe fourth in the priority of things sometimes. And right now I'm just fighting really hard just to keep it above water so I can entertain it. So it's been good, small projects here and there. But
I don't think it's cliche at all. I think that was a great answer, and I think people who are listening are probably taking a sigh of relief, because I mean we're both, you know, imperfect humans, and with that, people would think, oh wow, like, especially if they see, you know, I'm going to be vulnerable and kind of make sure people are not only seeing the greatness, because there's a lot of greatness to see that you're doing, but I think people would see that they might think that you're doing this only full time, that artwork's everything, and what you alluded to right now is there's ebbs and flows to this, and it's deliberate ebbs and flows, and sometimes maybe it's not deliberate, right? But the point is, that's okay. Like, you don't have to be 100% all in, even in the places that you would like to at all times. Figure out where the balance is, okay? You know, adjust accordingly, figure out what you need to prioritize, and then you can come back. This is the first podcast. Again, people who are listening to this are going to be like, yeah, in the world, where'd you go? But this is the first podcast I've done in a long time, especially with a guest. And I'll say straight up, and I'm pretty honest with anyone listening or anyone I talk to about being a startup founder, but yeah, I probably burned out twice doing this, because again, we're both active duty, and it's like, okay, what's my priority? Having this conversation, my priority is making sure that I am being a good husband and being a good father, and then the way that the money's coming in, and this isn't saying it in a negative way, because I love the Marine Corps, but that's my priority. That's my focus, and my Marines and the mission are the focus. So anytime I have to reevaluate, it's always been, you know, it might be this forum with you for art, but it's always been building Mentorch. That's always been the thing. Hey, I gotta evaluate. That's going to go to the wayside.
Absolutely.
I really think it's important people listening, I don't think you're an amateur, but when I look at, I actually have two of your art pieces in here. You're not only gifted and talented because but you're skilled, and it's because you work at that. So just saying,
Sure.
hey, these are God-given talents, I think there's a degree of that, right? But I also know there's also, you've optimized the God-given talents, right? And that's what most people don't do. Most people might be great at basketball or sport or singing or mathematics or whatever it is, and then they're like, that's it. This is what these are the skills. This is the gift God gave me, and that's awesome. I'm grateful for it. But they never truly optimize it, right? They never truly build on that. And I've been able to see you do that year after year, and it's been amazing. But it's because no matter what, I'm going full circle here. No matter what, I've seen you're always allowing that ebb and flow, you know, so that you can give those other areas of your life the attention they need. And it's been a beautiful picture to watch. And everyone who's listening, just know that is okay. Do not go, woe is me, like I'll never be successful because I have to put this on the back for a little bit. Continue to stay in the fight.
Yeah, well, you know, so, and I think you and I shared this. We're similar in our pursuits because these, you know, for lack of better terms, this side hobby that we're pursuing, this is an extension of a passion we have, right? It's a derivative of something that is just a part of who we are, right? The way you've been designed, the way you think, and what really, you know, lights your candles is this idea of mentorship and leadership, and you have found a way to express that and to open up the aperture of influence by doing this podcast. And it's awesome. And, you know, for the record, like, dude, I'm so proud of you. And it's just such an honor to know you and have been friends over the years. And I'm very much looking forward to that continuing. And in the same way, like, and you said it right, like, yes, you got a passion, it's an extension of you. Do what you can to put towards that, and put your heart and soul into it. But like, the reality is, like, there's going to be times where you have to push pause. And is that going to be painful? Yeah. Like, is that going to be against everything that you want to do inside your heart and mind? Yes, absolutely. But there is a we have to detach emotion from the obligations we have in life. And I think if I've learned one thing that I think your listening audience could relate to the most, that really the Marine Corps has taught me, is this idea that it is not about, so like when we try to measure fairness, right? So it's so easy for us to get caught up in comparison and comparing ourselves to other people when, like, that is not, that's not even a good rubric sometimes, because in reality, you're not going to be measured against like what you didn't do as much as you're going to be measured up against doing what you could with what you had, right? So like, you know, whether you look at it from a society perspective and there's people with less opportunities than others, or you look at it from a talent perspective where somebody, you know, plays sports and is less talented or gifted than somebody else, like, yeah, like those can be good head starts, or, you know, maybe they'll give you a little bit of edge in the beginning, but what pays off 99.9% of the time is that hard work over time and just the persistence. Like, it is all about persistence. And what I have learned, and you know, and I don't mean this to come across as arrogant, but like, I look at my work and I think I'm a talented individual. Yes. Do I acknowledge that God has gifted me? Yes. And there have been art pieces where, like, I'm so sucked in and I'm 3 inches from the paper and I'm drawing. And when I step back, I'm just like, holy, like, did I just do that? You know, after like 3 or 4 hours. And so that's awesome because it feeds and fuels the passion. But like, I don't settle on that. Right. And I'm not saying that I am, you know, separating myself from the pack in any kind of like self-righteous way, but because I know that in 20 years, I want to be one of those 50 or 60-year-old men who are able to say, like, yes, I had some talent, but like, I am now considered a master in the community because I've put in that 10,000 hours, right? Because I've put in the nights and the weekends, because I've sacrificed sleep and meals or whatever, right? And that sounds so cliche, but that's, if I am passionate enough about it that I'm willing to do those things. And I've seen small fruits from that type of lifestyle already. And kind of like you mentioned, right? Burnout is a real thing, and we've got to be careful with that. And there's an ebb and flow to it. But you know, the past year and a half for me, anytime I've like wanted to do art, it's had to be around my kids' nap time. It's had to be around my kids' bedtime. It's had to be secondary to family time and family focus. And so what does that mean for me? It means I'm having to get up at 3 a.m. just to paint from 3:30 to 6, right? Or I'm having to stay up until midnight just so I can paint from 7:30 to midnight. Or I'm having to, you know, I'm only able to get in like an hour and a half in the middle of the day when it, you know, and I can sit here and come up with a bunch of excuses like, well, I'm just, you know, I'm not feeling it, or like, I don't want to get up that early, or, you know, I need my sleep because of this tomorrow. Like, you know, the reality is we can do more than speaking physically. We can do more to ourselves and with our bodies as far as pushing the limits and all that stuff than we give ourselves credit for. And your mind is always going to tempt you to justify, you know, coming up with an excuse much sooner than your body is actually going to need you to do that. And so there's a bit of a balance there, but I've had to kind of do that in order to, like, you know, it begs the question, do you want this bad enough, right? Do you want to see progress bad enough? Do you want to, do you eventually want to make money off of your product? Do you eventually want to make money off your art? Do you eventually want to see this, you know, this podcast grow and develop and become something else? Then, like, bottom line, simple equation, it's going to take time.
Yep.
Time and effort.
Yep.
And so, and I guess the other thing I'll add to that too is that you're like, okay, all right, CJ, I hear you. I just need to put in more time. Like, cool. Like, I'll just put an extra 2 hours a day in by staying up late or whatever. That is half the equation. The other half of the equation is that, okay, cool, you're putting in extra time, but that time has got to be quality time. It's got to be focused. It's got to be on purpose. It's got to have a mission statement, right? It's got to have a purpose, a method, and an end state. Like, you've got to be doing it on purpose, because if you don't, that's just time wasted, right? Yeah. It's true, man. And you know, case in point, like, I had a student who was struggling really bad. And was kind of at the bottom of the totem pole when it came to academics. And they were just like, sir, I don't understand why I'm failing. I don't understand. Like, I'm putting in, like, you know, 12 more hours a week than so-and-so, and he's getting like 90s on the exam, and I'm getting like 60s. And I just don't understand why I'm doing more than he is, but I'm not getting the same results. And I'm like, the Marine Corps doesn't care about your effort. Like, effort is great, and it often leads you to more promising results. But the Marine Corps does not care about your effort. It cares about the product. Right. So whatever it means for you to get to that product, you know, on a scale, Alpha Bravo Charlie, Alpha being high quality stuff, I don't care how you get there. Just give me a freaking Class A product. Mm-hmm. And if that means you put in extra time, so be it. If that means it only takes you 20 minutes, so be it. Like, you got to figure that out on your own. And you go, you know, going back to your point, like, it's about optimizing yourself. And I'll get off my soapbox here, but that really parallels with this idea of, like, you know, one of the Marine Corps leadership principles is knowing yourself and seeking self-improvement. And dude, that is a paralleled concept, because you've got to know where your strengths and weaknesses are. You've got to know what you're good at. You've got to know both mentally and physically where you are weak and where you are strong. Maximize those areas that you're good at, right? Exploit opportunities in which you can employ those strengths, but you better be doing some self-reflection on a daily basis and identifying the areas of weakness and working on those as well at every opportunity. Because you know, I don't necessarily think that everybody has the ability to be well-rounded, in that we're strong in every area, and we don't, you know, I don't think we can necessarily minimize our weaknesses per se, but you can sure as hell try. And there are some areas that can be fixed and molded and mitigated against than others. And you can't live life with an excuse that you never had an opportunity to do that. And so, again, whether you're trying to build a business or you're trying to professionally grow yourself, that you on a daily basis, right? We've got the opportunity to do that, and we've just got to make sure that we are putting forth that effort and recognizing that effort's got to be not just made available, on our actual calendar, but that we're putting the quality and the focus in there as well. So I kind of jumped around there a little bit, but that's kind of what I've learned, trying to be somewhat of a self-employed is not the right term, but in trying to manage a side business while also being a growing professional and trying to give equal attention and genuine equal efforts to those things.
No, I love it. I mean, I definitely, you're extremely self-driven. I can definitely see that and hear that. How does mentorship look like when someone's mentoring you, if that's something that you have in your life right now? Because you are someone who you have so much already the knowledge of what the recipe to success looks like. You're mixing the pot and you're actually making it happen. How does someone mentoring you look like right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it actually wasn't until probably the past 3 years of my life. So I'm 31, and that I've actually had like a no joke mentor where someone was deliberately asking me hard questions and coaching me through processes. And when I was an early lieutenant, I did a little bit of self-seeking because I knew that was important.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I didn't lie, but let me explain something. So when I grew up, I didn't have, my biological father was not really in my life as a father figure, as kind of he should have been, and so my stepdad kind of took that role, and I loved them both, but I still just kind of felt that there was a lacking when it came to biblical manhood examples, from everything from being a father to being just an example of a man to being, holding a job, whatever it is, right? So in some areas I had really good examples. In some areas I was still hungry. Yeah. And the very, very first time where I was realizing that this gap existed in my life was there was an older man in my church when I was in junior high going to high school named Ben Briscoe. And he was a manager of a local bank, real kind of small town, only it's grown now, but I think maybe there were like 10 or 15,000 people in the town, pretty small. And he just kind of naturally took me on and was just genuinely interested in my life. And so, and he ran a post-football game, like Bible study kind of potluck thing. And so every Friday night when we'd finish our football games, we would go to the church and they would have food, and, they would kind of like, everyone would clap for the football players and they walked in, whoever was coming, whatever. And so I was a part of that. And I just remember, just feeling genuinely cared for. And not that I didn't by my parents, but just that he was someone who had no obligation to care for me, and yet was asking me about growing up and asking me about my plans beyond high school and asking me about what I thought about, being a man and growing up and just kind of maturing. And he just always spoke truth into my life. And I just, looking back, I still, even to this day, just very much appreciate him and what he's done. And so that was kind of where I acknowledged, okay, that was pretty impactful in my life. I've got to be proactive about trying to keep that. So didn't really have anything in college. My senior year, I did find an older guy who I did do Bible study with in the morning. I would link up with him around like 6 a.m. We'd have some coffee, and I would catch him twice a week before I went to class. Tremendously helpful. So I guess that really was a mentorship. That word never came out of our mouth, but that's really kind of what that was looking back. And then the Marine Corps never had anything official, except that there was a chaplain up at the regiment that I kind of would always proactively ask to have lunch. And we met up, I think, every other week or once a month, something like that. And that was helpful, but it wasn't, I think it was driven more by me than it was by him. And there was no issue with that. He enjoyed that. But it just meant I asked a lot of questions. So there's not necessarily any focus to all those things, except that it was just really all tied to self-improvement. So right now, I do have some older men in my life. Two of them are spiritually related, one of them being a former Marine, so that's helpful because we're able to kind of talk about some relative topics despite him being retired. And then one of them isn't tied to any like faith component, but he's an artist, and I've deployed with him 3 times now, and when I went on my first deployment for the combat art program, it was my second time to actually deploy, first time for the program. We were going to embed with a unit that was doing some operations in Africa, and I got asked by the director of the Marine Corps Museum. So I had been chosen to go on the first deployment, but they came up to me and were like, "Hey, CJ, we want to make sure we maximize this time. There are two artists who are more mature and more professionally established than you are, and we want to send one of them with you as a mentor." And they verbatim said that, and they were just like, "Who do you want to go with you? Who do you want to be mentored by?" And that was just such a golden moment. Particularly because one of them I admire, and I still do. I admire the heck out of his work, and I had just been drooling over it and was like, "Oh my gosh, how does he do this?" I just had all these questions, and I don't even think I had met him at the point. Just had like a phone conversation, and so when they offered that, I just my mind was blown, and so without a doubt, I was like, Richard Johnson. I would love to be mentored by Richard Johnson. And so he's like, "Okay, sweet. Thought consider it, done deal." So email came out, linked up, whatever, started, kind of doing some offline coordination. We went and deployed and did our 2 weeks in bed. And that was the most awesome time I've ever had because he just did such a great job as a mentor that even though he was literally like leaps and bounds ahead of me in skill, he didn't intimidate me. He didn't hold that over my head. He was very humble. I mean, like he was making mistakes, and like to the point where like I was looking at him and I was watching him draw, and he would make a mistake, and then I would kind of like in my head, I'm like, "Wait a second, that's Richard Johnson. Like he makes mistakes, right?" And it was like obviously super silly, but it just kind of like made me realize the reality is that like he's a person just like I am. I've put him on this pedestal. He doesn't belong there per se, and that he makes mistakes just like I do. The only difference between him and I is the 10,000 hours that he's put in practice, right? Mm-hmm. And so with that, I'm like, okay, it made his level of professionalism that much more realistic to attain in my head, if that makes sense. And so I just kind of realized like I admire his work. I'm seeing how he does it. He's coaching me along. I get to watch his process, and I'm able to ask questions and kind of get some live feedback. He's able to kind of give me some after action components. And so just exponential amounts of growth there. But then, oh, by the way, in doing that, I'm able just to close all these gaps that I've had before, right? Because there's benefits like watching YouTube videos and taking a course and just getting down there practicing. But man, that is literally the surface to the whole process. And if you've got somebody who has been there and done that, because Richard had deployed and had literally been in combat zones, had been shot at while he's conducted his illustrative documentations. And so he was able just to like coach me through so many things I hadn't even thought of yet. Yeah. And he was able to just really help me transform my mind and my way of thinking and my way of approaching all this. And then every time we would go on deployment and come back, I would have an opportunity to practice those things on my own and continue that learning process, albeit without him there to coach me and to kind of not supervise, but provide that feedback. I still was able to practice. And so I've been able to deploy with him 3 times now. And every single time it has just been, and I kid you not, I can look at my artwork before I left, and I can look at my artwork, my field works from when I come back from that deployment, and there is objectifiable differences between my work. And I give it credit to him being there and coaching me and just kind of walking me through and allowing me and enabling me to just learn on the spot, and really just where I was having gaps between the synapses in my head and understanding things or just trying to figure out how to portray something on paper, he was able to help close those in. Like, I'm going to owe him gratitude for the rest of my life, because without him, I would still be, I'd be back where I was 2 years ago without progress. So he's just really, really helped me grow as a young artist. And the beautiful thing is, like, through the process, we've got a great friendship. We talk occasionally. He lives up in Maryland, and it's just like we're old friends. Despite him being a Scottish guy and me being of German heritage, like, it's great. But anyways, yeah. So that's kind of who I got in my life right now. And then the other ones are just spiritual components. But yeah, it's important to have a mentor, because otherwise life is just harder than it needs to be. And gosh, man, like it's just good to go through life with someone you can rub shoulders with.
I love it. Yeah, if you listen to what CJ is saying, he never once said that Richard Johnson sat on the canvas and did the work for him, and that's all I've been hearing is CJ puts in the work, he listens, he absorbs, and he implements that knowledge, and that's where the value's coming from. And you're absolutely right. Mentorship, it's not about the mentor doing the work; it is about them taking some of those friction points, and some of them are absolutely needless, out of your path so that you can go forward. You're still going to have to put in the work. It's still going to be hard. It's still going to be challenging, but it doesn't have to be as hard and as challenging. The seas can be a little bit smoother. So I think that's absolutely great. One thing we want to grab from you is a resource, a key resource that contributes to your success, whether it's a planner, a practice, meditation, prayer, anything that you think that listeners can take away that you do, that you feel, hey, yeah, this is something that absolutely contributes to my success.
Yeah, I've got a couple things. I'll try to limit it to 3. The first one being a planner, I think is pretty important. And I'm not one of those I don't even stick to it religiously, which is probably not a good thing. But just the idea of having a plan to spend your time, right? Dave Ramsey talks about money, and he says when you get a paycheck, the reason a budget is so important is because you have got to tell your money where to go before the month begins. If you don't do that and you've got money that is unassigned to a task, it is going to find a way to get spent. It will. And we are people who love to just, it's so easy to swipe a card and just be mindless about it. And before you know it, 2 weeks have gone by and you've spent $150 and you're just like, where did this go? Right. Yeah. So you got to be deliberate with your money, but just like that, you got to be deliberate with your time. And so if you're someone like me, who's only got pockets of time and they're not ideal to your schedule, right? Like if you're a morning person, but all you've got is evening hours, like, hey bud, like, let's just hope it's a season and work through it. But like, how bad do you want it, right? Or if you're a night owl and you hate getting up in the morning, but like 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. is all you've got right now, then like you better dig deep and make it happen, right? And so, but having a plan and planning that out is a huge component, I think. So I don't. Real quick, let me grab it actually. Yeah, so there's I'm an advocate of this bad boy right here. I know you can't really see it, but it's got tasks to execute. It's got every day of the week. It's got it broken down by hours, and it's got some delegation to teamwork stuff. This is the action day planner. I picked it up by a buddy of mine who is a fellow instructor here, and I love it, man. It's great. Every time I've used it, every time I've stuck to it, it has really just made me feel very proud at the end of the day for using my time well and just managing all that. So highly encourage that. There's a similar one that I've seen just come out that's like for artists. So it's like it ties in like marketing, action goals for the week, and all that stuff. So I think I might start digging into that and having 2 planners, one for my art business and one for my Marine Corps life. So there's that. So I'd say planning is a big one. And this is going to be kind of vague, but just like staying humble. And I think that is so critical because from a humble perspective, you are more positioned to absorb feedback that is going to make you grow. Right. Part of it is about like not being so prideful that like you just come across arrogant and obnoxious and people don't want to be around you. Like that is part of it. But I think more so when you are humble, it's not that you deny that you're good. It's just that you acknowledge there is a finish line and that you're not there yet. And the beautiful thing is like, life is a journey and life is a learning process. And especially as an artist, that's never going to stop, right? There are masters out there who are in their 80s and 90s, or people who are dead or gone who have said like, hey, I was still learning things, when I was in my 80s. And it's just like, wow, like really there's that much to learn. But in a way that's encouraging because like that's part of the joy. Part of the joy is the learning process of growing and seeing yourself develop. And if you're telling me like I can look forward to that for the rest of my life, like that's not a bad thing. And so taking that on, but I think it's important that in order to maximize those opportunities of growth and maximize the opportunities that have potential for you to learn something, to grow, you've got to be humble. And that's just simply realizing, hey, there's always going to be someone better than you. and there's always going to be someone who is not as good as you. And both of those are okay, because the only person you need to be comparing yourself to is you yesterday, right? And you need to be striving for who you want to be tomorrow in the time that you only have allocated, which is today, which is right now. So dictate how you're going to manage today to become who you want to be tomorrow, not worrying about who you were yesterday. Not to be like so philosophical. Yeah. And then I would just say the other thing too, I mean, just priorities, right? Like for me, just trying to remember, like, I can't be so self-consumed with this that I forget to just like love my family and love people around me, right? If my art and my passion brings me joy, let other people share in that, right? So if I'm in my studio and being working on a painting for a couple hours, like revitalizes me, which it does, like that does give me energy and does give me just focus and energy. Going back to my family and just pouring that into them, right? Like loving my kids, loving my wife, and just letting that be a self-feeding cycle where they know that fuels me. I come back and I love them. And because they see that works, like they allow me to go do that. And they allow me to feed that part of me that just needs to be fed every once in a while. Hopefully it's an everyday process, but sometimes it's not, and that's okay. But just love the people in the process, love the process. And remember that life, I tell my students in the Marine Corps, like the Marine Corps is a people business. Part of it is about part of it is about what you know, but it's more so about who you know. And you may not have the answer, but if you know somebody who does have the answer, like that's just as good, right? And so similarly, like, life is a people business, and just when like using there's just so much joy that comes out of serving other people and just reaching out and just having community, whether you're tied to a faith topic or not. When I say that, just serving other people, God designed us so that when we serve others, there's joy that comes out of that, and that is intended and by design to give us energy and joy and peace, and it fuels us. So I try to do that with my art sometimes, and it's good. I want to do it more often.
I love it. Nothing but value, fire, and honestly, mentorship added here.
Yeah.
If you were listening to CJ right now, especially, but not only inclusive to this, if you're an aspiring artist, see that, I mean, he is multifaceted. CJ doesn't fit in just one box, which is absolutely amazing, and also what I love about him. Know that you can follow his example and also tailor it specifically to your journey in your life, and just run with it and continue to watch him. He's been picking up his social media game. I've been watching as that's been increasing. I've absolutely enjoyed it. Seeing things that I know I can't do. One of them singing, another's art, but it's fun to watch other people do it. And I've been watching you on social media, so I can definitely say, yeah, that's been an enjoyable experience to see the different projects you're doing. So make sure you follow CJ on social media. I will make sure I put his social channels in the notes. But this was the final piece of Pass the Torch podcast, and we will make sure not only you can listen to the podcast on Google Play and iTunes and Stitcher, but you're also going to be able to watch it as well. And so we'll make sure all those details are pushed out. Without further ado, I want to thank everybody for listening to Pass the Torch podcast. CJ, I want to thank you for sharing your time, because again, like his art, he's fit us into his busy schedule. Please tell Lindsay, hug Lindsay and the family from Eileen and I, and we will see you soon. Without further ado, this has been Levante Santos and CJ Baumann on Pass the Torch podcast, reminding you to seek knowledge and pass the torch. Boom.
Rah.